Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
That's right. Welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad. My name's Dave Momper. I'm your host. This is a fatherhood podcast for new dads and soon-to-be dads. I'm a new dad myself, and I'm asking every day, great dads, what does it take? What does it truly take to take on the ultimate role? All right, let's get to it. Mr. Ryan Darilek, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Dave Momper, thank you so much for having me, bud. It's good to be here.
You are under the sea. You got a great little background there. You're a
Yeah.
you're a clownfish connoisseur, it turns out. What else is in that beautiful fish tank behind
Yeah, there's some corals, not too much going on. A few fish and some corals, but
you? Well,
yeah,
hey, a pleasure to be with you. If if I'm not mistaken, you probably have a fresh dusting of snow in your neck of the woods.
we do. A stark reminder that the winter is here, just about.
Yeah, I'm up in Golden, Colorado. You're down in Colorado Springs, and it's a treat to be with you. I cannot wait for our listeners to hear your story in particular. You've given me little anecdotes, little some chunks too of your background and your life experience, and I've just been in shock and in awe and in admiration of you. I can't wait for everyone else to hear how you've navigated things and all the lessons that you have in your back pockets. Um, we met recently in the last year, the last, what, 10 months or so. We participated in the National Speakers Association, the Colorado chapter's Speaker Academy. That's a long bunch of words.
It
But
really is. But it'd say that's par for the course, just like that course was, drinking through a fire hose.
yeah, a lot of incredible people to motivate us, show us a little bit of the path, give us some of the behind the scenes of what it takes to run a professional keynote speaking business, and maybe in conjunction with other things we're doing. But it helped us refine our storytelling abilities. And that's kind of what I loved about getting to know you, is like you have this profound story, which, just before we get into it, if you could share with me uh, a little bit about your professional realm. At one point, I know you were in the contractor business, construction business.
Yes. Yeah.
How'd you get there? And then give me a little bit of an inside scoop on what kind of transition you're in right now, mindset wise and profession wise, so we can have some context on how you're thinking about your days.
Yeah, absolutely. So for about the last 25 years or so, the majority of my career, I've been in the construction industry. Started off as a boy working for dad's company, and grew up and ended up in construction management and becoming a general contractor myself, in residential and then also commercial later in the career, and development management and things like that. That all was going well, but then I, have a crazy story. And about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I ended up joining a board of directors for a community corrections organization. And I am now the chairman of that nonprofit, and have been for the last year, and will be for the next 6 years. So that's the transition I'm in to how my story was going to play into being able to share it on a bigger stage to help and benefit more people. So that's what the Speakers Academy was about for me. But in that process, I realized that things kind of fell into place more organically than I realized they would. And so now I'm working more so with consulting in the capacity that I have been working with my nonprofit for the last 5 years. So we've had a lot of success in our programs and a lot of impact in the community. So that's led to a lot of opportunities and doors opening, working with other nonprofits. So that's the direction I'm going, and the transition I'm currently in, going from consulting on the construction side to consulting for nonprofits and also government agencies.
Fantastic. And I
Yeah.
love kind of how, in my mind, from my perspective, and I'm getting to know you too, so I don't know your whole story, but when the nuggets and the aspects I have heard, it's been this poetic, beautiful journey for you, where you're now serving people who need support, perhaps more than anybody, on that level. And at one point, you were that person. So can you
That's
just
correct.
open up a bit and give us a little bit of what it was like to be Ryan Darilek when you were, I don't know, 18 to 25, 30,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
where you're at now?
absolutely. Yeah. So, and it can get to be a deep story, but the me from 10 years ago to the me today is vastly different. And like you mentioned, I used to be a client of the community corrections organization that I chair today. So I was sitting in those same rooms, going through those same programs, and a lot of the same situations and experiences that those people had. So it has been a wild journey, but I've definitely learned a lot along the way. Um, and that all leads back to my own weaknesses and my own fighting myself essentially. My young adulthood and growing up, I fell early on into alcoholism. I grew up in a split up family and learned to run from mom to dad at a young age, and to never deal with my problems. And I also dealt with a lot of childhood trauma in the form of sexual and physical abuse growing up. So those things, as I grew up, I was, taught to be tough and be a man, and we don't talk about our feelings, and we, just kind of push it under the rug, rub some dirt on it. And so that's what I did. And I thought, you just put up your own walls inside and you're going to be fine to challenge the world. And so, uh, as I got into adulthood and graduated high school, and then all of a sudden didn't have a mom or dad to run to anymore, and it was just adulthood that turned to alcohol. Alcohol was my crutch. Um, and over the years, I won't get into too much, but it got worse and worse. And next thing you know, it instead of becoming just being my crutch, it became the chains that were holding me down. And next thing you know, I've got 5 DUIs. A girl I had been with for 2 years at the time, Karen, was ended up getting pregnant. I had just lost custody of my two older sons 4 months prior. And so I was finding out she was pregnant. And she didn't, even though her or I didn't believe in abortion, she didn't believe in having a child with someone who was getting ready to go off to prison for 6 years and had warrants for his arrest. And the list goes on. She was kind of at the end of her rope in our relationship because of my alcoholism, and I had lost another job, and things were just snowballing in the wrong direction. And so I couldn't really blame her for saying that she wanted to have an abortion. And that's what ended up putting us at Planned Parenthood November 27th in 2015. And that's the same day as the Planned Parenthood shooting. And that day was a pivotal day for me. It was not only my rock bottom, but it was also the day that I realized what was important, and all of the damage that I had caused myself and those around me. Um, and when we pulled into the parking lot that day, we knew it was going to be likely something that our relationship wouldn't be able to get through and get past. Um, and so it was a hard and difficult, thing for us to do. On top of the abortion, we felt like we were going to be losing each other too. And so I didn't want that. She didn't want that. It was just, this is like how it was happening almost. Um, and I guess God had different plans that day. And I was one of the ones in the parking lot that he shot at, and she was one of the ones in the building held hostage for 5 hours. So, and that whole, it was my rock bottom point is really what changed everything. And it wasn't being shot at. And it wasn't, and just to, give you the quick story there is, uh, I had left the building and was in the waiting room, and the doctor had me come to the back because she was in the back having a hard time. And so I was able to see the building and where she was at in relation to the layout and everything. And I'm glad that happened because it, I think, saved some lives. But we went back out into the waiting room and was waiting there, and it was just a really cold vibe, and it felt off, and I didn't want to be in there. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go over to the King Supers and get a coffee and a Red Box. Remember those? Get us a Red Box to watch a movie later. And so I got in the car, And I pulled out of the parking spot and drove, and it's about a quarter of a mile to an adjoining parking lot to the King Soopers. So I got over there, went in, got the red box and my coffee. And at this point had gotten out and had just opened the door and gotten in the car when I got a call from Karen. Mind you, it's a cold day like today. Actually, the weather was a lot like today. It was snowing, about 27 degrees. So the door opens and the car speaker connects automatically. And I hear real loud coming over the car speakers in a voice I'd never heard, in a tone I'd never heard. And she said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in the parking lot." And she just sounded terrified. She said, "Get out of there." And I said, "What do you mean get out of here? I'm at King Soopers." And she said, "Get out of there. You're not, there's a shooter in the parking lot. They've locked down our building and there's a shooter outside. They think at the Chase Bank across the parking lot." And so I look over and the Chase Bank is literally right there. And then I look over and I see a bunch of like 3 or 4 police cars coming down the road. And so I'm like, "Oh, okay." Well, my hair stood up and I realized that she's right. I'm in danger. So I said, "What about you?" And she said, "I'm in a locked building. You're the one that's not safe. Leave." So I left and left that parking lot and drove down about a mile down the road to the bottom, down by I-25. And as I'm down there at this gas station parking lot, every SWAT vehicle, ambulance, police vehicle, it's all you could hear from all around. And they just kept pouring up this road. And after about 7 minutes of sitting there and still texting with her, and it was excruciating, not knowing what was going on, not knowing if she was okay or where the shooter was. Nobody had any answers. So I decided to drive back up that road and see if I could get to at least, if the shooter was over here, I could probably make it to where she was and at least get to be with her, right? And that was my goal. So getting back up to the top of the hill, I realized that likely wasn't going to be the case because the police presence was so overwhelming. I think there was, it was a number like 237 officers dispatched to this call. So you can imagine the police force, and there was SWAT officers on the roof of a big shopping center. And so they were everywhere you could see. As I got to the top of the hill, they had ambulances staged in a line and one in the middle of the intersection. So I had to go around the ambulance to be able to get through the intersection. So as I'm passing this ambulance, I look over and I see 2 officers dragging another officer who had looked like he had been shot in the head, and his head was down, and they were dragging him to the back of the ambulance. So my heart almost stopped, and I'm, oh my God, in my mind's eye, the shooting had happened right here, and this is where the danger was. And I felt now I'm in immediate danger and I need to get out of this intersection. So I went up to the King Soopers parking lot, which is just the next light or intersection. And I turned in, and they have police everywhere blocking things. And so I couldn't make it, but only in front of the grocery store. And they had the roadway blocked off, blocking where Karen was at the Planned Parenthood. So not being able to get to her, I stopped, I parked the car in the grocery store parking lot. I got out of the car. And at this point, there are gunshots going off, but it was real sporadic and they sounded far. As I got out of the car, I hear a loudspeaker come over, one of the, I can't remember what they call the SWAT vehicles with the boom antenna on it. It comes over the PA and says, "Sir, get to safety, you're not safe." And I look and to look at where the sound was coming from, and she said, "Yes, you get to safety." And I hear a volley of shots start breaking out. And so I'm like, she's talking to me, and I need to get to safety. So I run directly towards the King Soopers. And as I run up to the door, they had pulled the steel doors behind the glass doors shut, and the manager was there waving me away like this. Now keep in mind, they didn't know where the shooter was, how many shooters there were. For all they knew, I was the shooter. So they didn't let me in, and I go running to the next store, which I think was a nail salon. And they wouldn't let me in. And then to the next store, they wouldn't let me in. So at this point, the shots had intensified, and I hear it coming back from this direction, which is where where I just seen the police officer be shot. So I thought that's where the shootings were, the shooter was. I wasn't placing together in my mind that it was a horseshoe layout, and I was hearing all the echoes of gunshots, and majority were coming to the direction I was getting ready to go run towards. So I go running towards Karen down that strip of road. And I always reflect back on this moment because it's so like me, and not knowing that I'm running straight towards danger at this point in my life because I'm so oblivious to everything around me and thinking something in my head and just rushing with it. And that's it. That's the answer. So this is the time it almost got me killed, and it was very, very close. And as I got close to the building, there was this old berm that was grown over from construction. And so I couldn't see him, but he comes out from behind that berm in his tan overcoat, and he has an AK-47 with a brown stock in his hand, and he swings it around, and he's got these wide, bright, big eyes and this deranged look in his face. He doesn't look like he's in his senses, and he locks eyes with me, and I see his rifle come, and then I just start seeing flashing coming from the muzzle. And the adrenaline, of course, is coursing through my body. All my senses are in overload. My hearing completely goes. I don't hear anything. It sounds like I'm underwater. All I see is the flashing of the muzzle, and I can smell the gunpowder. And I can still smell it when I tell the story. It's a crazy thing to like connect me there, and it still gives me chills, but I can still smell the gunpowder. And I was 23 feet away, and he fired at me 7 times, missing all 7 times, which is a miracle. And as I turned and was now running back away from the fire when a squad car came through the field and came in between us and the 2 officers. I looked back as 2 officers got out of their car, and one jumped over his hood. And as he jumped, he took a bullet, right? And I saw blood and his head turn, and I just kept running. And I'll never forget that feeling either. Seeing someone take a bullet for you, it sticks with you. I made it back to the car, and as you know, a week or 2 later, I viewed the surveillance camera footage, seeing this all happen, and it was mind blowing because, first of all, I didn't know I was that fast. It was actually crazy how fast I was, but the miracle of me pulling out of that parking spot. The gentleman, as I was leaving, a gentleman pulled past me, pulled into that parking spot. And that was the guy that was shot and killed in the parking lot in that parking spot. And it was literally minutes, like 2.5 minutes after I'd pulled out of that parking spot that he got shot. So it's just a lot of like miraculous timing. But as I got back to the car, I'm checking myself for bullets, holes. Or for blood. I didn't know if I had been shot. And an officer came right in front of my car, and he's like, "You need to go." And I was blocked in. And so he had me drive up over the curb in these big, 12-inch rocks and scraping the bottom of the car, and got out of the parking lot. And as I was leaving that parking lot, I realized that I was heading towards the most difficult thing that I was ever going to do, leaving Karen. Knowing that the shooter, now knowing where he was in relation to where she was, and knowing that I was now leaving the opposite direction, it was so hard. It was so hard to do. And I didn't know what to do. So I downloaded the police scanner, and this is before they blocked a lot of the communication. So because of the overwhelming police force, that's all they were using was the public channel. So I was able to hear everything that was transpiring from the police force over the course of the next 5 hours. So because I had seen the layout of the room, and because I had knew where she was in relation, I was able to kind of direct her in ways too, and keep in communication with her. And for most of the day, it was, for the first 2 hours, he was locked in this entryway that was an acrylic 4-inch walls box in the entryway vestibule, and it's got a window for the teller, and then they from the other side would unlock the door, and then you would go into the lobby. Well, he was barricaded in that, couldn't get in, couldn't get out because of the police, and so he was using the door as a shield and firing out and shooting at police officers and propane tanks in the parking lot. Well, then they announced they're going to ram the building because they can't get to them. They're going to ram the building with this the SWAT vehicle, and see that way they can get to them. So I'm telling Karen they're going to ram the building. You're going to hear this. And so she's she's texting back, I hear it. Well, it ended up happening is they jammed the front door, and that acrylic box, think of it as a box, jammed open, and it broke and allowed the door to open. So when they hit the building, they opened the door into the inside, and
Come on.
now he had free reign into where the other hostages were. So at this point, my heart sinks, and I know Karen's definitely not safe. And so I tell her, you need to get to the bathroom, because she was in the back in an open room and hiding under a desk. Not hiding, but she had two other people with her, and they were behind the desk. And so I told her, you need to get to the bathroom. She takes them, and they go to the bathroom. And um, again, this all transpired over, I think, a 7-hour standoff. But I remember being in that parking lot, and things were intensifying, because I could hear on the scanner that he's now in the conference room, and now he's going down the hallway. And then I'm talking to Karen, and I hear the gunshots getting louder and louder on the other end of the phone. And I hear Karen telling me she's scared, and telling me to tell her parents and her boys that she loves them, and she doesn't know if she's going to make it out. And I'm telling her, don't talk like that. Don't talk like that. It's God's going to answer prayers. Keep in mind, she didn't believe in God until this day, and those words weren't really falling on her. But I guess I was saying them more for me when I think back about it. But it's the gunshots got louder and louder and closer, and I heard a scuffle, and it sounded like she was going to say something, and then the phone disconnected. And so it went from shots to her like making an abrupt sound, and then the disconnected. And at that point, I'm sitting there just staring at my phone in the parking lot, and it started snowing again. And I'm looking at my phone, just trying to make sense of what had just happened. And I'm listening to the scanners, and there's nothing, there's no response. And then the scanners break silence, and I heard a female's just been shot in the women's restroom, and that's where she was hiding. And I knew it was her, and my heart crushed, and I just fell. I collapsed in the parking lot. Um, and I laid there for the longest 14 minutes of my life, and it was the most excruciating pain. I could barely breathe. I was so paralyzed in my own pain that I couldn't even blink. And I just remember the snowflakes falling and hitting my eyeballs. And it was just I can't really describe the feeling, but in those moments, I was thinking about how all of this had happened, and how it was my fault, and it was the alcohol, and it was my demons that had not only taken her life, but our child's life. That this was going to be the end for me too. There's no way I was going to be able to live through with this kind of pain. I was just going to have to tell her parents and her boys that she loved them like she asked, and that was going to be the end of our chapter together. And that's where I was at. I had lost everything. I was facing prison, and what else do I have? The only thing I had else is gone. And then everything changed in an instant, and I felt the vibration as I looked over, and it was a text from Karen, and she said, I'm out. And in that 14 minutes, it was SWAT going in that building, surrounding her, grabbing her, pulling her out, and getting her in that vehicle into safety. When we were joined in that parking lot after that 7 hours, a doctor came up, and she still had the IV in her arm. And he looked down at her, and he said, well, what are we going to do about this? We need to get you over to the hospital. And she asked, and she said, is it too late? And she looked at him, and he said, well, no, it's not too late. And she grabbed the IV and ripped it out herself and said, I think God has other plans, as she threw it on the ground. And coming from someone who was an atheist, that was a powerful statement. And when I found out she was alive, I made a promise to God, and I made a promise to her. I'm going to face my demons. I'm going to make everything right. Not really knowing what that meant or what all that would entail, but that's what I committed to. And so it was a week after that incident, and at this point, meeting with FBI and all these interviews, and my body was a physical wreck from all the trauma and all this. And I went and checked myself into the courthouse, and ended up facing the music. And instead of 6 years in prison, I was given the opportunity to do the DUI court program, which is an intensive rehabilitation program um, designed to make people succeed, but it's very difficult to get through. It's very expensive. You check yourself into jail every day. You're out at 6 a.m. You go to court once a week. You meet with probation once a week. You go to therapy twice a week. You do your community service 10 hours a week, all while you're trying to provide for your family and pay $1,200 a week to do all these services. So it's no wonder that so many people fail through these programs. And in the 27 in my immediate group, only 3 of us were able to get through it. Many of which took their own lives or ended up in prison. And so I learned a lot in those 2.5 years, but for the first time in my life, I was given the tools that I didn't know that I needed to realize that alcohol was just a symptom. And it was actually the trauma that I had in my life that I had shoved under the rug all those years ago that had led to my alcoholism, which I didn't even realize was a problem. After DUI 2 or 1, it should be a problem. I would argue with myself, and but for the first time, I realized that it wasn't me. It was I was dealing with a lot more that was underneath the surface. So I worked through my trauma, and that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done. But it was also the most freeing. And doing so and working through that and learning to not be tough and learning to feel my emotions, I learned that addiction doesn't really have that kind of control over me or over anyone really. And so I was able to break those chains of addiction. I've been sober now over 9 years. And it's been an incredible ride. But it wasn't only a 2.5 year program, and about 6 months after I had completed that, I was approached. At this point, I've got 3 years of sobriety under my belt. My life's already on a completely different trajectory. My business is doing well and breaking the 2 million mark in annual revenue, and which was a mark I'd been trying to get for years. And one of my clients comes to me and says, "Hey, you've proven yourself as an adequate problem solver. Would you be interested in joining a board and doing board work with me?" I said, "Oh, I've got no board experience. What's the board or what's the organization?" And he says, "Comcore." And I was like, "Oh my God." Yeah, he doesn't know that I was a client of Comcore, and this was the organization that I had my ankle monitor on and was doing my classes through and had to go do my drug test at. And so I was, wow, I would be honored to join the board. And so I went in that next week for the first board meeting, and come to find out that board meeting was them letting me know that in a week's time, we were having to shut the organization down, and that my role was going to be to fire this list of 47 people that they were giving me of the 119. And we were all breaking it up kind of more evenly, and such was taking executives. And I'm like, how, why, and at the same time, there's FBI agents carrying boxes of files out. And there was a federal investigation for fraud going on. 18 months or 24 months earlier, the angel investor that had bought the organization as the founder stepped down for retirement. They promised they were going to bring in all these programs and do incredible things for the community, none of which were true. And they came in, and this guy was buying private jet lessons and a private jet properties out of state and the organization's name. He drained the $2 million foundation account completely dry. And had started a $2 million construction project with no means to pay for it. And they were halfway done, and the contractor was pulling back. And this is where all our clients were. So it was just, they couldn't make payroll that next week. And that's how dire closure was imminent. And so that was the first time I shared my story in a public setting. And I in a boardroom, opened up and told the only 2 remaining board members that were left my story, and my experiences with our justice system, and my road going through it. And I cried in that boardroom. They cried in that room hearing my story. And I said, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we have got to do something to give this organization another chance. And they agreed, and we all agreed. And we started there. And that was about 5, 6 years ago. And that organization now has done some incredible things in terms of the programs that we implemented, from not only just the things that I learned, but things that we've learned over the years. And then also in our more recent years, looking at metrics a little bit differently and what works and what doesn't, implementing the peer-to-peer programs and addressing trauma before addiction. When you do that, you're able to break that cycle of recidivism and the likelihood that someone's going to recommit a crime in the next 2 years. Here in our county, and then not just our county, but nationwide, your county as well, it's statistically 82 to 86% recidivism rate, meaning that people coming out of jail or community corrections programs within 2 years are going to have another felony. So ComCore was no different, but now all these programs have flipped the script, and our recidivism rates are between 5 and 20% instead of 82 to 86%. So that means 80% of the people coming out of our programs are going on to start their own businesses, their own families, giving back into the community, and really rewriting their stories just like I did. So it's been an incredible journey, but that's I guess the half short version of it.
The deep dive, but not too deep, but pretty damn deep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ryan Darilek, listen, this is a podcast about raising legends and being a legendary father. It's not about being flawless, it's about being raw. And you are undoubtedly in legendary status at this point, even though I bet you humbly would say not yet, not yet.
Not yet.
So
It's a work in progress.
thank you for just, telling it as it is and bearing your heart and soul on that journey. There's so many things that I was struck by, like, I got to know this and that. But I suppose maybe if you kind of go back to your time with Karen, during the incident, like, what was when you were able to actually see each other in person? I'm just curious about that exchange. And, you're both in disbelief, you're in shock. Was it that it was the same day? I suspect you're able to see her that day, later on that night.
Yeah, we got there at the clinic. It was I think about 10 o'clock that morning. And it was, I think, 7 o'clock that night. It was either 5 or 7 o'clock that evening. It was dark out when we were able to be rejoined. That was man, I felt the whole day I had felt so constricted. My stomach was in knots. I had thrown up probably 12 different times throughout the day that I was just dry heaving. So my stomach was still in shambles. Everything, I just felt like I was dying. I was dehydrated, so I was cramping. That was the state I was in all day. But then when we were rejoined and I wrapped my arms around her, I felt like life going through my body. I felt like blood reaching my fingertips for the first time all day. I don't know really how to describe it other than I just felt like so much life going through me and relief and weight off my shoulders. I cried uncontrollably. I just sobbed. Yeah.
And did she end up actually not getting injured, or was she injured?
She was not injured. Lady next to her was shot and killed. She was not injured.
I mean, the other people's stories of this same experience, there's a huge variety of a huge spectrum of them. Some people lost their lives, um, and everyone is impacted in a significant way. It's just the odds of you being able to tell this version of the story are crazy, right? If we really,
Really are. And the trickle effect of me being able to share this story has been healing, not just for me, but for others too. So that sharing that story has had some incredible impacts, not just in our lives, but in others. And so our son was born that April 16th and named after Officer Garrett Swayze, who sacrificed his life. And it was a couple years after the incident and the shooting that we were able to sit down with officers Garrett Swayze's wife, Rachel, and share our story with her and let her know the depth of not really the why, but knowing for her own healing that her husband's sacrifice and her sacrifice, that there was so much more to it and so many more layers, and that thousands of lives were being impacted because of his sacrifice. So it was pretty incredible to be able to share that with her.
And so let me extrapolate what you're really getting at, right? I mean, for one, your son was born and wasn't, there was a point where that was not the trajectory that you guys were on.
And well, actually, it was so close that if the shooting would have started 3 minutes later, our son would not be here today because the procedure would have happened. She had already reached the hour waiting window from when they give you the medication to when you're fully dilated for them to be able to do the procedure. She was already dilated from the IV medication, and the doctor had walked into her room when the shooting broke out. So just a few minutes time difference would have been totally different.
My gosh, that's eerie in a way, and beautiful in a way. And so
Right.
a difference of 3 minutes, you wouldn't have your son. And so is your son's name Garrett? I'm gathering Garrett,
It's Jackson Garrett.
Jackson Garrett. And then all of the people who now EmBrave is supporting, those thousands, right? Because this transformation was sparked in the darkest hours of your world, which was this incident.
Right.
And so it's thousands of community members, your family, Karen and her family, your kiddos, your friends, and so a massive nod to Officer Garrett Swayze. Um,
Yeah.
and I suppose it might be fun now to acknowledge this this situation led to you having Jackson. And then was Jackson the first or the second of the, I suspect there was then another one that followed, if I'm doing my math
Yes. Yes, that's correct. So we had Braden, who is 15 months younger than Jackson,
right. Okay.
directly after him.
And I'm gonna drop the data on the listeners now. These two kiddos would then be the sixth and seventh boys in your life between you
That
and
is
Karen.
correct.
You had early on in your life, you had if you had two kiddos from
Correct.
an initial marriage in your life, initial partnership.
Correct.
Karen had three kiddos from a
Correct.
previous chapter in her life. And now you have
Yes.
two more kids together. Seven boys end up being under your tutelage.
We got the bench covered.
Oh my goodness. You've got a small football team. That's amazing.
Yes. We are
And
blessed.
give me and our listeners a little history or a little summary of the spectrum of ages now, current modern ages, because I want people to understand now that we have this context of kind of this amazing journey you've been on and something that's almost unimaginable taking place. You now are the father figure to seven boys,
Yes.
and yet it's not that they're all 10 years old, right?
Right. So as you mentioned, 6 and 7 are our youngest. My two older boys are 17 and 20. And then Karen's older boys are 20, 28, and 30.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
And so now you've got uh, this role you're stepping into, and I'm gathering as soon as all this kind of it took you, and maybe you're still reconciling it, bro. I would imagine like it's still probably processing years later, but there was a time where you weren't necessarily in new Ryan mode. You're shaking old Ryan mode, but you're still parenting, you're still guiding. So I
Yeah.
suppose what were the immediate months and years after? What was your perspective on fatherhood at that time? How did it look differently prior to the incident? And then what's it like now? Like just kind of give me, I'm just thinking of those three stages before the incident, shortly thereafter, and then eventually you've got your own kiddos
Yeah.
together. And here we are in 2024 together.
So, wow. And my perspectives, and that's, I think something that, all the gentlemen listening can take away from this is that your perspective on fatherhood and on being a leader and on all these things is going to adapt and change over time. The common denominator for all phases of my life and for all my boys has been that I've loved them more than anything in this world. But what's changed, I think, is my ability and understanding of how to love them and how to provide for them. It's not just buying them all the stuff at Christmas or for their birthday, but actually investing the time. And it's just I guess a totally different mindset. So directly after the incident, and I was still working through so much of me and so much of what the trauma, and for that first like 2 years of Jackson's life, it really was focusing more on me than anything else, more on me than Karen and more on me than my son. And when I say focusing on me, it was me focusing on being in jail and doing my community service and making sure I'm doing all my probation stuff and paying all the money it costs to do that. And for me, that was me taking care of me. But in doing that, I was paying for my therapy and doing all that work that I needed to do. So the first couple of years were tough because I think for the first 10 months, I was in jail. So like I was, it was rough because not necessarily like I was missing out on Jackson's life or anything, but I was missing out on being there for my wife when she needed me to be there. And as you know, I mean, there's so much pressure and so much change and so much. So all, bless Karen's heart, where she's going through all of that essentially alone when I go off to jail every night and then can't be in touch with her or answer the phone if she's got, if she just needs a friend. Like, and so that was the hardest part. But in doing that, I was able to really refocus on how I could be a good parent. And that was being whole myself. And I think once that clicked, it changed my mentality, not just in my profession and what I was doing in my career and for my nonprofit work, but most importantly in my family, enabling me to be there for Karen and be the rock that she deserves. And us, there's so many curveballs life throws you. And it was a gut check that she had to do that almost essentially alone in the first part. But when I was all done with that, then it was just a whole newfound appreciation for the time that I was able to spend with them. And so I cherished every single bit of it and made sure that, yes, I'm going to work 60 to 80 and sometimes 100 hours a week as an entrepreneur, busting my butt to make ends meet and get things happening. But I'm going to carve out that time and say like, yeah, I got a lot to do, but at 6 o'clock sharp and until 9 o'clock every evening, I don't care what pops up. I'm not answering my phones and I'm not doing anything but being involved with my family. So that was something that was a different step for me because I didn't realize the importance of that in the first round of raising my older boys. It was, I'm always going to be off grinding and working, and that's just the price you pay. And when I reflect back, I feel I've apologized to my older boys for this. I'm so sorry. I messed that up. And I need you to hear me say that I messed up and I'm sorry. And they forgive me for it and they love me more than ever now. And it's been incredible. So as I mentioned earlier in my story, I lost custody of my older boys just before all of that really started transpiring. And that was really a big driver and me starting to drink even more, and it coming to the point of I don't even need to do an oil change in my car because the car's still going to outlast me. That's where I was. So I derailed on the train of thought there, but it's a stark difference between all these different phases, and especially even now where I'm at now, I of course still prioritize the time, but I just have a different viewpoint and I think a different vantage because I've seen kind of from both sides of the fence, and tried to be a loving father from both sides of the fence. and you can be a loving father and supportive father both ways. But this way on this side is so much more rewarding.
Man,
So
I just want to acknowledge a couple things that I've heard in that. It's like you coming through this, going through this, coming out on the other end as you are now. It took you focusing on yourself adamantly with a crazy amount of conviction and commitment but you're doing that on behalf of others. But you have to. It's kind of like putting on the oxygen mask first in the metaphor of the plane emergency landing or something like that. And I
right.
just wonder, you had to learn the hard way, if there's not just a hard way, like the ultimate hard way, uh, that you have to take care of yourself in order to be able to take care of others. And I'm just thinking about, for all of us fathers who haven't necessarily had this intensity, this type of intense experience, there's still a lesson in there. Like, the best way to serve my family is to be robust myself. And am I neglecting something, which I'm doing, I think, because it's what's needed in the moment, to neglect myself to make these, so that, neglect myself to either, I don't know, build your business or to tend to your kiddos, your relationship. But in fact, that's actually going to wear you out in the shorter intermediate term, and the whole thing is a mess. Or
Exactly.
invest up front. So I don't know, it has me thinking, like, how do I make sure I am as as robust as I can be as a father, so that I can add value to my kiddos' world and to my wife's world. So, second thing is this this relationship dynamic between you and your biological kids, right? I know, what was their perspective of the experience? Like, how did it change your relationship in those first couple years? You lost custody, but I suspect you regained it eventually. At this point, you have it. But, like, give me a little bit of, like, the relationship dynamic and their processing of you going through this. And if this happened 9 years ago, one of them was 9, or let's see, 17. So 6. Holy cow.
Right. Yeah.
6 and 11.
Yeah. And see, and it was for my older boys. I have the most regret when I look back at, thinking about through the father lens. If I have any regrets, it centers around them. And it was because of all of this. When um, I was younger, and when you're younger, you things, your thoughts are just, your priorities are different. Everything's different. Um, my brain fart.
Easy going. So I'm wondering about how that relationship, what did it look like with your now 17 and 20-year old sons in those early days, when I'm sure you're not able to
Got it. Thank
communicate?
you. All right. Now I know where I was going.
Yeah.
So early on, and so when my first wife and I divorced, my youngest son, I think, was around 2.5 or 3, and he had just started talking when we split. And when we separated, he stopped talking. And that was how he handled that. And when we go through something like that, it affects our kids in more ways than we realize. And so he had a real hard time emotionally. And so he didn't talk until about 6, I think it was 5 or 6, that he didn't start talking. So he had a speech impediment that then he's still, I think he's pretty much through that now after some speech therapy and things like that. But just his mom and I splitting up and his world being uprooted caused him to stop talking for years. And then um so then here things were back together, and I had him every other weekend, and things were fine. And then next thing you know, their mother takes them out of my life with a court order and a protection order, and has no contact. And so as far as they see, dad just disappeared. And so I thought, in my mind, I didn't know if they knew that I was thinking about them on their birthdays and Christmas and things like that. So I think it was hard for both of us. Um, the perspective now, watching, it wasn't until about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago, after 8 years of being out of each other's lives, that I got my two older boys back in our lives again. And it's been incredible because at this point now our younger boys are, 7 and 8 or 6 and 7, and or no, 5 and 4 and 5, and they had never met their older brothers before, and you don't really know what that interaction is going to be like. And those four meeting was like they had never missed a beat. There was no missed moments. There was no missed bond. They loved each other so much and had an immediate connection. It's been one of the most fulfilling things in my life to watch those boys together being brothers. It's been incredible.
Right on. And just one day, I can't imagine that they're necessarily sharing stories of their dad yet, but one day I just can't imagine how interesting it's going to be for them to articulate the early Ryan and the later Ryan, and as a father, and the difference in their stories, and yet maybe some of the similarities, and just like when they're 35, making sense of all of this and actually appreciating you for the human that you are and the journey you've been on. I bet they're kind of doing that, your older ones at least. But
Well, actually, it's funny you bring that up because it wasn't my last talk that I gave was at the Inherent Gentleman Society downtown in the Springs here. Um, and thanks to my newly acquired skills with the National Speakers Association Academy, I wasn't quite as nervous or in my head about this talk. And even though it was a big talk and I knew there was going to be some important ears in the room that needed to hear this message, I just wasn't nervous. And it wasn't until right before a talk and as I'm getting ready to share my story, I try to take myself back there. And as I'm driving there, I'm reliving the moments and allowing myself to feel the emotion so I can connect better with myself and then be able to relay that to the audience and people listening. So as I'm feeling those emotions and sometimes I'll get choked up and start crying just thinking about my story almost every time. And so I'm driving down the road and I'm thinking and getting choked up, and I'm like, man, I just don't know how my story could get any crazier. And then I look down and I see it's from my son Caden, my oldest son, who's 20 years old, and he had seen the promotion for the event online and would text me moments before it's about to start, telling me he's going to come listen to my talk. Is that okay? And I'm, oh my gosh, of course. So it was 2 weeks ago that Caden actually listened because he hadn't heard the story. In the last year and a half or 2 years that we've been in each other's lives, I've broached the subject a couple of times to the point of I've gotten to apologize and get into a little bit, but he's never really wanted to go there or ask questions or really, that kind of thing. And so I've left it at that just so we can take it step at a time. And so for him to say, I'm going to be there to hear your talk was really changed my perspective. Next thing you know, I was pretty nervous and I was like, oh my gosh. And I had this whole thing planned out about how I was going to structure it. And this is going to be the key takeaway. And I changed it entirely and said, all I'm going to do is just be my most vulnerable self and share my story from both sides of the fence so that he can hear it. And it was the most moving to witness that. It was pretty incredible.
wow. Wow. I bet is it accurate? He wasn't quite ready to hear it until say 2 weeks ago, right? I mean, he wasn't he wasn't it's just the timing. He just wasn't there yet. But 2 weeks ago he hears it for the first time and he gets to see a version of his dad that he probably didn't even know existed, I would suspect, right? Is that I mean,
Pretty much.
what were some of the takeaways? Has he debriefed with you the impact it had on him or any of his revelations?
He has, and that was, I think, the best part of it because at the end of my talk, there was a question and answer session. And so a lot of the people in the audience wanted to talk directly to Caden and say, man, if I would have heard my dad tell that story, it would have changed my life. How did it impact you? And so he stood up and actually said, this is how it's impacted my life. And he addressed me and because I got pretty honest and open with the whole room and admitted my faults and things that, weren't easy to admit and how tragically sorry I was, for the grief that I caused in his life and the absence that was there. And But he stood up and he told me, never once did we wonder if you were thinking about us or if you loved us. That never stopped. We thought about you constantly, and we never stopped loving you.
Oh, wow.
And our love for you has never changed. And so I think at that point, everyone in the room, all dudes, we're all crying, and we're all, it was moving. But he kind of forgave me and let me know that 99% of the anguish and the self, I don't know, I don't want to say self-hate, but all the things I was holding against myself uh wasn't what he was seeing through his eyes. Really, all they see is they just love us. They love us unconditionally, the same way we love them unconditionally. And that's something I just recently learned 2 weeks ago. That's pretty incredible that our kids had that same capacity of love to be able to love unconditionally like that. It's
Right.
pretty amazing.
And I bear with me as I weave this out, but it feels like they want to love us unconditionally, and it's almost you would almost you'd have to go to the end of the earth to actually convince them otherwise. Some kids get to a point where that happens, I think, sadly, right? They get that
Yeah,
impression and they set it aside, but they're rooting for us, and you were rooting for your kids the whole time you're going through all of this hardship, and it's just neat to hear that there's finally this intersection between Caden and you of understanding, to both hear the or know the same information now. And I mean, the next few months, I wonder um, what else he's gonna share with you, and where that relationship goes now that there's this shared understanding of things.
it's been an incredible journey, and I'm just so thankful that um I've gone through everything that I've gone through so that I can show him that it doesn't really matter what you go through in life.
Yeah.
You're in charge of your ending, and you can write it however you want.
Well, that's almost
So
I want to experiment or hear a little bit with you about what are some of the key takeaways for your kiddos, which may not be accessible yet, especially for your younger ones right now. But as time goes by, the next decade goes by, for one, Caden got to see you in the most raw form, showcasing bravery, vulnerability, the courage to divulge, all of yourself to frankly strangers in a room, but also to him. And um, for him to be able to now exemplify or emulate what you've exemplified is huge. So I just feel like bravery is now available to your kiddos in ways that it just wouldn't have been because of the experience you've lived and then now how you're sharing it. What other key attributes tied to being a great human, a productive human, a beautiful value add member of society, an incredible
sure.
leader? What other aspects do you feel like are available that you're hoping your kiddos, the young ones, the older ones, are going to take away one day eventually
Sure.
when they need it most?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important things, like you just said, is bravery, is essentially being vulnerable. I think being honest, having integrity, and being a servant are all key cornerstones to success, not just in your professional life, but in your own happiness. Um, my biggest thing is teaching my boys, the old ones and the young, the power of vulnerability and the power of honesty, um, and doing it by example. And it's not always easy to do, to apologize to your kids when you're wrong, or to um, admit that you handled a situation a little bit more aggressive than you should have, and you're sorry, and this is why. But having that level of empathy is so crucial and important, because when you stand back and you look at our role as fathers, it's it's mind blowing. To share a statistic with you, here in Colorado, we have the highest suicide rate of any one state in the U.S. 80% of which are men, which is a crazy statistic. And of those men, most of which are above the age of 40 to 60 years old. So what does that tell you? The professional age group, you and I, are the most suicides more than anywhere in the US.
Hmm.
Why? Why is that? And it's because our generation was taught to be tough and to be a man and to be what we were taught the wrong perception of what being tough and what being a man really is. And so that's the barrier I want to break for my kids, and why Caden being in that room as I shared that story was so crucial, because I was able to show him this is the power of vulnerability. It's not being perfect and having it all figured out, but being able to admit when you're wrong and being able to talk about the things in your life and in your past that may have been traumatic or may have hurt you, so that you guess what? So that doesn't turn into the chains that hold you down, because it might not be alcohol addiction. It could be drugs. It could be a consistent repeating cycle in your career where you'll reach management, and next thing you know, you get in fights, and then you're starting back all over again. And it's the cyclical cycle. And it's had so many of us in our life have trauma and refuse to acknowledge it. And it is so detrimental to us and our overall happiness and well-being. So that's my biggest thing that I drill into my kids.
Well, and I think it's the combo pack of you being able to express the hardship, process it through that expression, and then also the value of sharing it through that expression as a gesture, and kind of you're leading people by example. But let's not neglect what uh, none of this would happen without Ryan Darilek taking personal responsibility, ultimately saying, well, shit, no one's going to solve this for me but me. And
Right.
for people to see that, because I think it's the combo of being resilient, convicted, and having like the brawn to go forth through the fire, but then the balance of that is the vulnerability and the openness to sort it out.
Right.
And you seem to have wrangled both of those sides of the coin.
It's a work in progress. It always is. But the number one thing is being able to feel those emotions, to be able to be okay with being mad and be okay with being sad, and to be able to feel those things. Because if you don't, then you're blocking it off. And it did. I can't get into all the brain chemistry stuff, but there's a science to how it works. And that's more your lane, but it's fascinating. And you're so right on some of the key points I've heard you talk on about how our brain works and how the chemistry works and how that plays into it. But absolutely.
Right? And then just guiding our kiddos to a point where no matter what they go through, um, they can reconcile it and not let it actually be a chain and hold them back, and then still be creative and innovative and connective and generative and productive and resilient in life, because life is a bit chaotic regardless, even,
Can be.
and yet um, it's also beautiful, and you got to seize these opportunities and make the most of things.
That's right.
So Ryan, just being mindful of time, I feel like version 2.0 of this conversation needs to happen, because there's a million other themes and places I'd like to take us all, with your story. But maybe to put a bow on it for this pod, I just want you to picture the life you've gone through and where you're at today. And I just want to summarize what I've heard, by the way, right? Like a rambunctious youngster, we'll call you, raising a little hell as a youngster, getting yourself into trouble. Nevertheless, stepping into your adult life, building a bit of a career, building some relationship, and then, um, you're an entrepreneur, so you're actually trying to build a business, not just have a career, build a business. Of course, the Planned Parenthood incident, absolutely a massive jolt in your world. And for you to then go through recreating yourself, continuing to build your business in the GC contracting construction world, and now having not only come out of it, but now you're leading an organization that supports people who hopefully can find a degree of the same kind of transformation you've had. Like, incredible, right? And you've done this with a partner who easily, I'm sure you both have looked back and be like, there were like 6 different times or whatever number of times where we could have just parted ways, and yet we've stayed the course together. Like, I'm just trying to extrapolate your world a bit to
Yeah,
recognize what you've been through and where you're at. And now you've shifted careers, you're engaging in the speaking world, you're telling your story, you're now more doing a little bit more consulting for nonprofits as well. I just want you to acknowledge that. That's where you are today, right?
that is
Hats off,
today. Yeah.
hats off to you. Seriously, I wish I could squeeze you through the Zoom here and give you a hug for
I,
just pouring your heart out, man. But I
well,
want you to
thanks,
now
man.
like take a few breaths and picture another couple decades go by, and you're a youngster. You're a 39-year-old man right now, so you've got time. Let's
Oh
imagine
yeah. Yeah.
40 or 50 years from now, your kiddos, all 7 of them, sitting around a campfire. You're not there. They're reminiscing about their father. You're not in the room. Maybe you've moved on. This could be a long time from now, actually. You've got a lot of lane left.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully.
I just want you to picture them with their kids, who would be your grandchildren, right? And maybe another generation is in the mix, and they're reminiscing about Ryan Darilek, the man, the legend himself, and they're telling stories of who you were that represent some of the most important attributes. What are the 3 things you're known for that you hope you're known for? How does that sound coming out of their mouths the if you have a little bit of agency over what they're saying today, picturing it in the future? How do you anticipate or hope they're describing you around a campfire in the future?
I hope they describe me as supportive, um, as a visionary, as honest, um, and I think most importantly, as loving. I want to be remembered and always to my kids and grandkids as loving. Is the most biggest part of that cornerstone.
Supportive, loving. Are those 3? Do you want to bucket them? Give me like categorically. Ryan was incredibly supportive and loving, right? Number 2,
And he always put others above himself,
servant
service
minded,
above self.
indeed.
Yep.
And a third one,
Honest.
honest. That
Honest.
integrity piece, I feel like how are you teaching your kids integrity and honesty right now? I mean, what do those conversations actually sound like? You highlighted that, but I feel like give me like,
Honesty. Okay, so integrity is always doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching. So it can be as simple as, putting the carts back, and that's that servant minded, and so that's a big part of it. Honesty. I I teach them honesty by being honest with them. Um, very honest. And sometimes it's hard to do with a 7 or 8 year old. But and when I say honest, I mean I'm honest with my own faults too. So if I'm wrong, or if my son says, "Yeah, it's this," and I'm like, "No, it's not, buddy. No, it's not," and okay, he's not going to argue with that, right? Then I realize, oh, he was right, and I was wrong, and I'll go back and I'll talk to him and say, "Hey, I just want you to know um, that you were right and I was wrong." So being honest, I could keep that to myself, but I want them to see that it's an act. It's an act.
yeah, an intentional act, isn't it?
Yep.
So I suppose final question, the holidays, 7 sons. I mean, flag football on Turkey Day. What's it like having 7 sons all
It's
together?
great. It's great. We don't get them all together anymore. We've got one in Florida in the Navy.
Okay,
So he won't be able to join us this year, but we do get them together every chance we can, and it is a great time. It's a great time.
awesome. Well, Rob, appreciate you jumping on with me, and I just want, hats off to you. You're you've made you've made the most out of just some incredibly challenging life experiences, and feel honored to have met you earlier this year and to hear your story a little bit throughout that process, and now sit down with you and hear it. My hat is off to you, striving to be a great dad, a great father, a great human, kick-ass businessman, and a good partner to Karen. So thanks for your time on Whoa Dad, Go Dad, Ryan.
I appreciate that, brother. I look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Cheers, my man.
All right, buddy.
There you have it. That's been another episode of Whoa Dad, Go Dad. If you like what you're hearing, hit the like button, subscribe to the podcast so you get the future ones, and please spread the word and post this episode to your social networks. That's powerful. Perhaps the best thing you can do is share this directly with a new dad or a soon-to-be dad that you know personally. Let them know you're rooting them on. And indeed, drop a comment and be really a part of this dialogue on fatherhood with me. Let me know in the comments a question you want me to ask other dads, or just some feedback. How does this sound to you? What's helpful? What stands out about these conversations? I would appreciate that intel as I grow Whoa Dad, Go Dad. I've got many more episodes to come, and I'm so glad you're here. Looking forward to catching you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, here we go now. Oh yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh yeah, here we go now.